All right, today we're going to be taking a look at the dynamics of intelligence. We're going to look at what is known as crystallized and fluid intelligence. We are going to also be taking a look at cross-sectional studies and longitudinal studies with regards to intelligence, stability of intelligence test scores over a lifespan. Does your, for example, IQ increase or decrease over your lifespan, and traits of those who score low and high on those intelligence extremes. All right, so as their measurements from infancy that indicate intelligence, what do you think? Do you think that there's some tests that you do in infancy that can indicate whether people are going to be a genius or have a learning disability, what have you? The answer is no. They actually test before age 3 are moderately predicting future aptitudes. So by what age can measurements start to predict intelligence? It's really after the age 4. One of the things that they have found is that high scoring children on IQ tests were early readers. So reading at an early age is important for IQ. That is a social phenomenon. By age 5, it is a pretty good predictor of intelligence. Okay. So the WAS, created by David Wechsler, the Wechsler scales, the most common one is used as the WAIS-R, is the most common IQ test that is out there. All right, so when we talk about aging and intelligence, what is a cohort? A cohort is, as we talked about earlier, when we did an assessment with people your own age. If you guys remember who were the musicians and actors in your cohort and so forth, people in your same group of people over a period of years. Until late in life, intelligence remained relatively stable. So, why does nurturing affect intelligence? Well, one way is through crystallized intelligence. This is the accumulation of knowledge and verbal skills. Obviously, this will increase as you get older, as you learn more and more things. Okay. Fluid intelligence is our ability to reason speedily and abstractly. This decreases with age, especially during late adulthood, as we've taken a look at. The less we use something, it decays and so forth. And so our knowledge goes away. One of the things that we have found is that high scoring 11-year-olds are more likely to live independently. We also find those same cohorts that they are less likely to deal with Alzheimer's disease. They did a study with nuns and looked at their early writing, and they found that there was less verbal ability in those nuns who are higher risk of Alzheimer's at the age of 75. So there are some predictors of effect of intelligence. So let's take a look at some of the studies and research done with intelligence. A cross-sectional studies that compare people of different ages at the same point in time. They use cross-sectional methods. They found mental ability declines with age. It's one of the things we found. There are longitudinal studies that follow the same cohort at the same period of time over time. They found intelligence remains the same on some tests that even increases. So that would be the nurturing effects. So, how do adults win and lose when it comes to growing older in their intelligence? Our ability to recall memory and process speed, what we call fluid intelligence, diminishes. But we gain in vocabulary knowledge, which is crystallized. So we lose fluid intelligence and we gain in crystal intelligence. Older adults, social reasoning skills increase. And that comes through experience as well. So, how stable is intelligence over time? Casualty observations and intelligence tests before age 3, as we said, modestly predict future intelligences. And these are all things that we talked about. After age 4, it's a better 11 that we see uh, stability across the board. So this is why we consider longitudinal studies. Every child in the country born in 1921, around 11 o'clock, took an intelligence test. The aim was to identify working class children who would benefit from further education. Do you recall this kind of chart? What do we call this? That's right, a scatter plot. The data here shows the results of that research. So what can we conclude? When intelligence tests administered to those 11-year-olds and then readministered them to 542 survivals of 80-year-olds, the correlation of the two sets of scores, nearly 70 years varied experiences, was striking. So we go back and look how similar those scatter plots are. This longitudinal gives us the best idea about that. So let's talk about the extremes of intelligence. We'll start with the normal curve, or what we call a bell curve. We use this when we talk about intelligence to show where people fit across the scale with intelligence. So in this case, we are going to be looking at majority of the people are going to fall 68% within those 15 points, standard deviations of 100. All right, and then you have equal amount that will fall below that on each side. So as we look at intellectual disability, this is what we used to call mental disabilities. We are now calling them intellectual disabilities. Males outnumber females by 50%. Really interesting. Okay. So we're talking about the spectrum of 70 and below. The criteria that must be met to diagnose somebody with an intellectual disability is a low IQ score and difficulty adapting to being independent. Okay, so we're talking about conceptual, social, and practical abilities with people. So within the intellectual disabilities, we have what are called mild disabilities. Those people who range in 52 to 69, they have learning skills up to a sixth grader. You have moderate, which is 36 to 51. This would be like a second grade level. These people fit in this category will still be able to work. Severe disability would be somebody in the 20 to 35 score range. This is an individual who can talk and do simple tasks. Maybe it'll put caps on something at a workplace, hold boxes, that kind of stuff. And then you have the profound, which are 19 and below, who will require constant support throughout their lifespan. So one of the most common intellectual disabilities would be the Down syndrome. Mild to severe intellectual disabilities associated with a physical disorder caused by the extra chromosome in the 21st pair. So one of the things that happened over the lifespan, in my lifespan, was moving from students with intellectual disabilities being isolated in their own institutions to being mainstreamed. Mainstreaming is the inclusion of students with disabilities into the normal, what we call the normal classroom. So the question is, what's best for them? Do they have advantages of being included, or can they receive special instruction when they are secluded and being restricted in their environment? There's all kinds of opinions about that. Now, on the other extreme, we have what is called giftedness. This would be the top 15%, if you will. Not the top 15, the top 3% of students. In terrain study, highest levels attained a highest level of doctors, education, become lawyers, scientists, professors, etc. 1 in 3 of gifted students were likely to get a PhD. In the 1980s, Time magazine had on their front cover Asian students who were labeled as the whiz kids. We typically think of Asian students as being highly intelligent, but is there a social phenomenon there? Do you guys remember the prodigy child, the student who graduated high school and college so early, before he was 10, etc.? This is what we call a prodigy child. Gifted programs came much later than intellectual disability programs, um, because our belief was that kids who are on that spectrum would be able to take care of themselves. But we find, just like intellectual disabilities, kids who are gifted get lost because they are not challenged. And so the challenge, for example, Albert Einstein was considered to be aloof when he was in school. Didn't actually graduate. And the reason was it was so easy, he got bored. So some of the criticisms of gifted programs is segregating children in special classes, giving enrichment that other students would not be available to. That creates a self-fulfilling prophecies. You guys remember what that is? Uh, that that's what it could possibly lead to. All right, so that is a little bit of a look at um, the dynamics of intelligence, and we'll see you next class.